Two billionaires, one battle for influence. On one side, a political powerhouse threatening government contracts and calling out disloyalty. On the other, the world's most powerful entrepreneur firing back with cryptic signals and billions on the line. This isn't just a personal feud. This is a case study in power, policy, and the economics of the 21st century. What happens when markets and politics enter the ring? Welcome to the real fight for the future of capitalism. Of course, we're talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They are two of the most polarizing and powerful figures in modern American life. One reshapes industries from electric vehicles to space travel, while the other rewrote the political rulebook and reshaped conservative populism. Their recent public clash, marked by insults, political threats, and economic consequences, is more than just a celebrity fight. It's a microcosm of underlying tensions between political authority and private capital, between state power and entrepreneurial ambition. This episode goes beyond the headlines to explore how this clash reflects fundamental questions in economics. Who really holds the rein in capitalism? What happens when political capital and market capital collide? And how do economic theories from public choice to Keynesian uncertainty help us to interpret all this drama? At its core, this battle reflects a classic tension between the state and the entrepreneur. Trump, the president and political influencer, represents the institutionalized authority of the state. Trump, by contrast, represents the autonomous entrepreneur, what Schumpeter calls the creative destroyer. This echoes long-standing debates. Should governments direct economic activity or let innovation lead the way? Keynes warned us all that entrepreneurs often operate under conditions of uncertainty and need public support. Hayek, in contrast, feared centralized planning would stifle innovation. When Musk criticizes Trump's spending priorities or threatens to move capital overseas, he embodies the libertarian critique. But when Trump threatens to cut off federal contracts, he reminds us that even the boldest entrepreneur is not beyond the state's reach. When Musk resigned from the so-called Trump's Efficiency Advisory Council, he called the 2025 budget a disgusting abomination. This wasn't just rhetoric, though. It was a political entrepreneur signaling market dissatisfaction with fiscal choices. According to public choice theory, political agents make decisions not necessarily for the public good, but in response to voter blocs and institutional initiatives. Musk, who benefits from millions, and a lot of them, in federal contracts via SpaceX and EV subsidies, is leveraging private influence to shape public outcomes. The irony? Trump, a businessman turned into president, uses public power to punish a market actor. This back and forth reveals how political markets and economic markets are codependent. It also shows us the limits of the invisible hand when it's tangled in federal procurement. Market's response to this battle was immediate and it was dramatic. Tesla shares plummeted by more than 14%, erasing roughly 150 billion in market value in a single day. This reaction illustrates what economists call the Laffer's curve's logic. When political hostility raises perceived risks like losing governmental contracts or facing regulatory retaliation, investor confidence will collapse. According to supply-side economics, certainty and favorable policies are necessary for investment and production. Here we see the political instability eroding that confidence. While the Laffer curve originally illustrated the diminishing returns of high taxation, it also applies more broadly excessive state intervention, whether through taxation or political threats. They can reduce economic output, reduce innovation, and market capitalization. It is well known that Musk's companies have disrupted autos, energy, telecom, and now aerospace. He is the embodiment of Schumpeter's creative destruction, the force that brings the revolution to economies by replacing old systems. Trump, by contrast, often champions economic nationalism, protecting domestic industries with the famous tariffs, subsidies, and federal loyalty. When Trump accuses Musk of disloyalty or threatens to block his contracts, he's channeling a mercantilist mindset where the state decides who wins based on allegiance. But Schumpeterian capitalism thrives on risk, disruption, and global mobility. This ideological conflict between nationalist preservation and global entrepreneurial disruption is at the heart or at the core of this clash. And the thing is, it is shaping how America balances industrial policy with innovation. Trump and Musk both claim outsider status, but they are two very different kinds of outsiders. Trump leads a populist movement that thrives on mass appeal, grievance, and symbolic power. Musk, meanwhile, is a technocratic icon, gaining followers through innovation, science, and a big aura of futurism. Public choice theory reminds us that elites aren't just in government, they are in business, media, and culture. Each leader will build coalitions not just on merit, but on the narrative that they use. And this battle has fractured their overlapping base: libertarians, conservatives, and market enthusiasts. This Musk-Trump battle will, for sure, redefine who speaks for capitalism and whose vision for America's future prevails. Musk's cryptic suggestion that Trump appears in Epstein-related files wasn't just gossip, it was a calculated signal. Game theory teaches us that in settings with asymmetric information, players use signals to shift outcomes. The threat doesn't need to be explicit to be effective. Trump's unusually calm response suggests he's aware, and very aware, of the reputational game that is at play. In these strategic interactions, payoffs depend not only on current moves, but also on expectations of future retaliation. This is a classic signaling game, where even vague innuendo can alter the equilibrium of the game. As with all such games, reputations, uncertainty, and audience will shape the outcome. One of Elon Musk's responses to the conflict was a strategic pivot towards India, signaling that global capital can always find a new home. The Mundell-Fleming model reminds us all that in an open economy with capital mobility, domestic policy must be able to adjust or lose investment. When political risk rises in one country, capital flow to safer ones will happen. Tesla's exploration of Indian markets shows the limits of national economic control and the globalized world that we live in. Trump's America First stance doesn't bind companies that operate across borders. The more interconnected our capital markets become, the less effective coercion is, especially against these giant global firms like Tesla and SpaceX. Why did Tesla's market cap drop so fast? Part of the answer for this lies in Keynes' concept of animal spirits. That is, the idea that market behavior is often driven by emotion instead of logic. Political instability will trigger fear, not just rational recalibration. Investors responded not just to fundamentals, but to the tone of the battle, the headlines, and, of course, the uncertainty around the battle. Modern behavioral economics support this. Narratives, heuristics, and herd behavior amplify perceived risks. This battle shows how quickly a high-tech stock can become a political casualty, proving once again that markets as psychologists as they are mathematic. I conclude by saying that this isn't just a personal spat. It's a case study of 21st century capitalism. Trump represents state-centered, loyalty-driven power. Musk, on the other hand, represents tech-centered, market-driven disruption. This battle exposed deep tensions in how modern economies are governed. Should government support innovators, or should the government act as a disciplinator for them? Should billionaires be free to reshape industries, or be held accountable to public norms? As the US heads into another election cycle, this battle may influence not just market trends, but voter psychology and regulatory direction. In the end, this Musk-Trump saga isn't just about two men. It's about what kind of economic future America and the rest of the world that usually follows America wants to build.